They didn't pay me for my time. They paid me for my hands. Not in the poetic, starving artist way either. Literal cash. Folded, crisp, counted out one bill at a time onto the lid of my steno case like the woman was buying seafood off a dock. She never stopped looking at my fingers while she did it. Not my face, not my resume, just my hands, like she was checking for bruises or missing joints like there was a standard. "You're the one who can do it without recording," she said. "That's kind of the point," I told her. I tried to sound like a professional. I sounded like a guy in a thrift store blazer with a maxed out credit card. The place was a clubhouse, but it wasn't a clubhouse like pool tables and kid birthday parties. This was a gated neighborhood's showpiece. Stone veneer, perfect hedges, a fountain that kept running even though it was cold enough to hurt your teeth. Cameras on the corners. Keypad on the door. No signs, just a small brass plaque that said community room in that font rich people love. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and fake vanilla. The kind of smell that isn't clean, it's just loud. Like somebody had scrubbed a crime scene and then lit a candle to celebrate. There were 10 chairs in a circle, a cheap lectern, and a carpet that looked too new for how dead the building felt. On the floor, right in front of the lectern, there was an old black speakerphone. The kind with a red LED and buttons you could press with a pen tip. Like it had been dragged out of a storage closet from the 90s and nobody had bothered to upgrade because the old one still works. Nobody greeted me. Not even a fake smile HOA greeting. They just watched me set up. The woman with the cash had a pearl necklace that looked like it cost more than my car. She held out a clipboard before I could even take my coat off. "Read," she said. I expected a contract. A waiver. Anedea. It was a single page torn from a notepad, written in all caps with a thick marker. The ink looked fresh, like somebody had just finished writing it in the parking lot. Procedure for minutes. Read before we begin. Rule 1. Do not type the word approved. If anyone says it, write affirmed and move on. Rule 2. If asked to read back, refuse. If you can't refuse, cough over the sentence so you don't return it clean. Rule 3. Never write anyone's full name. Initials only. If corrected, ignore the correction. Rule 4. If a bowl is placed on the floor, keep your feet off the carpet. Sit on your case. Do not let chair legs touch the rug. Rule 5. When the lights dim, stop typing. Put both hands flat on your thighs until the lights return. At the bottom, in different ink, like someone else couldn't resist adding their own little confession. If you accidentally type any forbidden word, bite your tongue until it bleeds and smear it over the keys. Don't be brave. Be messy. I stared at it for a second too long and felt my face do that thing where it tries to laugh but can't decide if it's fear or disbelief. "You're kidding," I said. She didn't blink. No explanation. No charm, just a wall. I looked at the circle of chairs. Most of the residents were already there, sitting like they'd been posed. Calm faces. Too calm. Smiles that didn't happen anywhere near the eyes. One guy had slick hair and a tiny flag pin on his lapel like he'd been born wearing it. One woman had a messy bun that looked deliberately messy, like she'd paid for it. There was a couple that sat so close together their knees touched, but they didn't hold hands. A thin man in a sweater vest kept wiping his palms on his thighs, even though his face stayed blank. I told myself what I always tell myself. Rich people love rituals. Rich people love making normal tasks feel exclusive. It's a power thing. It's a boredom thing. It's not my job to understand it. My job is to get paid. Then I noticed the carpet. It was a beige loop pile, the kind that hides stains until it doesn't. But right in the center of the circle, there was a ring, subtle at first, like a shadow. The fibers were bent flat in a perfect circle, like something heavy had been dragged around and around in the same path until the carpet gave up. Inside that ring, the color looked wrong. Not darker like spilled wine, darker like damp that never dried. Like the carpet had been washed with something that didn't rinse out. My stomach did a small, quiet turn. Pearl necklace woman, P&W in my head, because I was already doing rule 3. Watch me looking. Her mouth twitched upward like she caught me reading over her shoulder. "You understand?" she asked, tapping the paper with her nail. "Sure," I lied. She nodded like that mattered, like she just locked the door. I set my steno machine on my lap. It's a weird little beast if you've never used one. No letters, just chords, a thing that turns your hands into a piano. Mine had a small preview screen because I'm not a purist. I like knowing I didn't just translate someone's life into garbage. I kept glancing at Rule 1 because it seemed so stupid. Approved. Why that word? Why not yes or amen or whatever cult shit they were clearly doing? Then I wondered if I was being unfair. People throw cult around because it's easy. Maybe it was just some bizarre HOA arbitration thing. Maybe they'd had a lawsuit. Maybe they were paranoid about transcripts being used against them. Weird, but not supernatural. The meeting started without anyone announcing it. The room didn't shift. Nobody cleared their throat. They just aligned. 10 mouths opened and began speaking in the same rhythm like they'd practiced in their kitchens with timers. Slick hair flag pin guy, SHFP, because I'm petty, stood at the lectern. He didn't introduce himself. He just said, "We welcome our recorder." My fingers twitched automatically. Rule 1 slammed into my brain like a hand on my wrist. He hadn't said approved. He'd said welcome. But the list wasn't about welcome. It was about approved. Okay, fine. Still, something about the way he said welcome made my skin tighten. Like he'd almost said something else and chose not to. Like he was testing the air. I started typing because my hands do what they're trained to do when a person talks. It's muscle memory. It's how you feed yourself in a courtroom full of people who don't care if you're human. They talked about agenda items that weren't agenda items. They talked about boundary maintenance, but not property lines. They talked about the opening, but not a door. They talked about keeping it satisfied, like the room had a temperamental generator. Every time someone spoke, the others stared at them like they were listening to a priest. Calm, devout, eyes not quite blinking enough. I typed initials when I could, but they weren't giving names anyway. No introductions. No. Im Janisha. They were already a unit. I was the rented appendage. The air in the room felt filtered, not just clean, controlled, like the vents were pushing the same breath around. I told myself not to be dramatic. 20 minutes in, PNW stood up. She didn't excuse herself. She didn't say a word. She just walked to the center of the circle and placed a ceramic bowl on the carpet, right inside that worn ring. Rule 4 flashed. I lifted my feet fast and pulled them onto my steno case. My thighs immediately started burning. Not because I'm weak, because holding your knees up like that for minutes feels like a slow punishment. The bowl looked like a serving bowl you'd put salad in. But when the overhead light hit it, I saw dried streaks inside. Layered, brownish red, like something thick had been poured in, left a crust, then scraped out, then poured in again. Over and over. No one reacted. They kept speaking in that measured cadence like the bowl wasn't a thing. PNW went back to her seat and folded her hands in her lap like she'd placed a centerpiece at dinner. Then the bowl made a sound. Not a clink. Not porcelain settling. Something wet and heavy shifting inside it like a fist in mud. A low, soft thunk. I swear to God my throat tightened. I looked around the circle for any sign that someone else heard it. Nothing. Calm faces. The sweater vest guy's jaw clenched, but he didn't look down. His eyes stayed locked on the lectern like he was afraid of what would happen if he acknowledged the bowl. The slick hair guy said, "We affirm. Rule 1. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was proof. They'd built that line into their speech. They were dodging a word like it was a landmine. I typed affirmed anyway because that's what he said. He didn't say approved. He said affirm. But my fingers hesitated like the word itself had weight. PNW watched my hands. That pissed me off more than it scared me. Like what? I'm a fucking dog doing tricks. Then someone else. MB maybe, a man with a beard that looked like it had been styled with a ruler, said, "We are in agreement that the recorded minutes will remain internal." We agree. The circle echoed back, not chanting, just synchronized. The moment they said, "We agree," the temperature dropped a notch. Not a blast of cold, just a shift, like someone cracked open a freezer in another room. My fingers kept moving, but my skin prickled. It was such a normal phrase. We agree. People say it all the time, but the way they said it here, it sounded like a key turning. The speakerphone on the floor stayed dark and silent. I kept my feet off the carpet. My thighs burned harder. I adjusted my posture, so I was basically sitting on my case like the rule demanded. It felt humiliating and stupid, and in a way like I was being made to kneel. They argued, but the arguments were wrong. Like they were acting out conflict rather than having it. SHFB said the last incident was preventable if the recorder had complied. Someone snapped back, "That's convenient coming from you." But their faces didn't match their words. No anger, no heat. It was like listening to actors who knew their lines but didn't know why the scene mattered. I started to catch odd phrases. Don't return it. Keep in the room. Don't let it hear itself. Leave space when necessary. And then, in the middle of this sterile fake argument, PNW slipped a small yellow post-it onto the top edge of my steno machine like she was tagging something in office. She didn't ask. She didn't speak. I glanced at it without moving my head too much. Don't fix errors. Let them stay. My stomach tightened again. That wasn't on the rule sheet. I wanted to peel it off and throw it at her, but her eyes were still on my hands, and the whole room felt like it was waiting to see if I'd break something. So I left it. I typed. I swallowed. I counted minutes in my head like counting breaths. An hour in, the overhead lights dimmed. Not flickering, not a power dip, just dimmed like someone slid a dial down. The corners of the room sank into shadow. The exit sign stayed bright green, ugly and sharp. Rule 5. Everyone stopped speaking at the exact same moment, like their audio track had been paused. I stopped typing so fast my fingers cramped. I put both hands flat on my thighs. The silence was immediate. Thick. It pressed on my ears. The carpet ring lifted slightly. Not like it rose in a big, obvious hump. Just a subtle swell, like something underneath took a slow breath. The bowl made that wet shift again, slower this time, like whatever was in it was listening. I stared at the far wall. I focused on a fake painting of a sailboat because staring at the bowl felt like staring at a mouth. My thighs shook under my hands. I could feel the vibration in the carpet through the case under my ass, like a distant engine idling. Then the lights snapped back to normal brightness. Every resident inhaled at once. 10 lungs, 10 mouths. They started speaking again in the same rhythm like nothing happened. I started typing again because if I didn't, I'd probably start screaming. The speakerphone cracked. Not a ring, not a dial tone, just a sharp little static burst, and the red LED flicked on. A voice came out, low and dry, like it had to scrape itself through sand to get to us. Read back the minutes. Rule 2. My heart punched my ribs so hard I felt it in my fingers. Nobody moved. They all turned their faces toward me like mannequins pivoting. Calm, expectant, hungry in that quiet way. PNW leaned forward slightly. Read it, she said, like she was asking me to pass the salt. I shook my head. No, my voice sounded too normal in that room. Like a real human sentence in a staged ritual. SHFB's jaw flexed once. You will. No. I repeated, sharper, because anger is easier than fear. That isn't what you hired me for. The speakerphone breathed static. Read. I felt sweat collect in my palms. The keys under my fingers suddenly felt like teeth. The post-it on my machine stared at me. Don't fix errors. Let them stay. I didn't know why that mattered, but I knew it did, the way you know the stove is hot without touching it. I did the only thing Rule 2 gave me. I coughed. Not a polite cough. I forced something ugly out of my throat, like I was trying to hack up a nail. I leaned forward and started reading the last sentence I typed, but I coughed over every third word, chopping the sentence into nonsense. We cough, affirm, cough, internal cough, remain. The speakerphone crackled, sharp like teeth grinding. The lights dimmed for half a second. Rule 5. Hands flat on thighs. Stop typing. Stop reading. I clamped my hands down like I was afraid they'd float away. I stopped speaking mid-word. The carpet ring lifted again. Higher this time. A noticeable bulge, like something pressed a shoulder up under the rug. The bowl thumped. Hard. Then the lights returned. The residents exhaled slowly like they were relieved. Like the cough had worked. Like I passed a test. SHFB stared at me with something close to disappointment, which was insane because he looked like a guy who had never been disappointed in his life. Like everything always went his way. They resumed their argument script. But now I could feel the room's attention on me like a hand between my shoulder blades. They weren't just performing for each other. They were performing around me. I typed faster because speed is how you outrun panic even though it never works. Then it happened. The dumbest little slip. The kind of mistake you make when you're tired and your brain is juggling 5 rules and trying not to imagine what's under the carpet. SHFB said, "We move that the prior decision be approved." Approved. Rule 1. My fingers betrayed me for half a second because my whole career is built on accuracy. He said the word. The word went through my ears and straight into my hands. I'll pay. 2 strokes. The beginning of the forbidden word. My preview screen flashed the letters like a little confession. The room stopped. Not dramatically. Not like a movie. It just paused. 10 people held still, mouths slightly open. Even the hum of the vents seemed to go quieter. The bowl made one slow, wet shift. The carpet ring lifted. My mouth went dry. My tongue felt huge and stupid in my skull. The extra ink note on the rule page surfaced in my mind like a lifeboat. Bite your tongue until it bleeds and smear it over the keys. Don't be brave. Be messy. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about dignity. I didn't think about how insane I'd look. I bit down on my tongue. Hard. Pain flashed so bright behind my eyes I saw stars. Warm blood flooded my mouth instantly, thick and metallic. I bit again, harder, until the taste was copper and panic. Then I spit. Not cute, not delicate. I spit blood onto my fingers and smeared it across the keys like I was trying to ruin my own machine. I dragged the blood over the keyboard, into the gaps across the edge of the screen. My hand shook so bad I got it all over the steno case too. It was disgusting. Stringy. Huh. The room started moving again like the pause button had been released. People blinked. Someone swallowed. The sweater vest guy's eyes watered, but his face stayed blank. PNW smiled. It was tiny, satisfied, like she'd watched a kid finally tie their shoes right. That smile didn't scare me. It made me hate her so much it felt clean. SH.F.P. said continue, like I just spilled coffee and wiped it up. I wanted to stand up and walk out. I wanted to throw my machine through a window. I wanted to do anything except stay in that circle with my bloody hands and their calm faces. But my body stayed because my body has been trained by rent and debt and the constant low-level fear of not making it. So I kept typing, and they shifted into the part they'd been edging toward since I walked in. I could feel it. The cadence changed slightly. The air got tighter. The bowl thunked more often like whatever was inside it was getting impatient. SHFB said, "We affirm the opening remains controlled." The group echoed, "We agree." Again, the temperature dropped. This time, the speakerphone clicked like a tongue. PNW leaned forward and said, almost gently, "Say it again." The group repeated, "We agree." My hands kept typing, but my skin crawled like ants under my sleeves. They were building something with repetition, like words were bricks. SHFB looked at me, really looked at me for the first time, eyes sharp. "And the minutes," he said, "will reflect that this is approved." He said it on purpose. He wanted me to type it. He wanted to see if I'd bleed again. My throat tightened. My tongue throbbed where I'd bitten it. Blood still slicked the keys. Rule 1. I typed. Affirmed. SHFB's lips pressed together, annoyed. "No," he said, calmly, like correcting a waiter. Right what I said. PNW didn't look at him. She looked at my hands. Waiting. I swallowed hard. "I can't," I said. "You can." SHFP replied. You're choosing not to. Yeah, I snapped because I could feel myself slipping into that corner where you either get angry or you cry. I'm choosing not to. That's what choices are. The sweater vest guy made a small sound, like he was trying not to laugh or vomit. SHFB ignored him. Your fee, he said, nodding at the cash on my case, is for compliance. My fee, I said, is for taking notes. The room went still in that micro way again. Not a full pause, but like everyone leaned in. PNW spoke softly. You read the procedure. Yeah, I said, and it's insane. It is necessary, she said, like she was explaining gravity to a child. I stared at her pearl necklace, at the way it sat so perfectly on her throat. I had this sudden ugly thought. How many people had sat in my chair? How many people had tried to be professional and broke and ended up bleeding onto their own equipment? SHFB smiled then. Not warm, not even smug, just a little curl that said he enjoyed the moment. Then you understand, he said, that we are not asking. The speakerphone crackled, low and approving, like it enjoyed the word. I felt the room tilt towards something. The carpet ring lifted slightly, like it sensed the tension. I was done. Not done like brave hero storming out. Done like a cornered animal. Like something in my chest snapped and stopped caring about consequences. I looked down at my steno machine. Blood smeared on the keys. The yellow post, it still stuck to the top edge, now speckled red. Don't fix errors. Let them stay. My preview screen still showed the partial AP I'd typed and bled over. A little ghost of the forbidden word. SHFP said, right approved. The group echoed, quieter now, like a prayer. We agree. The speakerphone clicked, and the overhead lights dimmed again. Rule 5. Hands flat on thighs. Stop typing. I froze with my fingers hovering. The room went silent. The carpet ring lifted higher than before, a clear bulge now, like something underneath was pushing up with its back. The fibers stretched tight. I could see the outline of pressure, like a knuckle under skin. The bowl made a wet, eager slurp sound, like it was drinking air. My heart hammered so hard, I tasted blood again. The lights snapped back. Everyone started speaking at once again, like the ritual resumed. Except my steno machine. My machine kept typing. Not my fingers. My fingers were still hovering, shaking, not pressing anything. But the keys depressed in quick, steady strokes like invisible hands were playing them. The little preview screen filled with letters. Approved. Clean. Full word. No hosetashchen. Like the machine was proud of itself. Rule 1 shattered, and it wasn't me. It was my equipment. My tool. My hand's extension. The room exhaled like a single organism. PNW whispered, almost reverent, good. Somebody in the circle started crying quietly. Not sobbing, just tears leaking out while their face stayed blank. Like their body didn't want to be part of this anymore, but their mind was stuck. The speakerphone made a sound that wasn't static and wasn't breathing. A soft, papery chuckle, like paper tearing slowly. I stared at the word on my screen and felt something cold slide down my spine. This wasn't about transcripts. This wasn't about legal cover. They were using my machine as a mouth. And once it had spoken, the room felt heavier, like something had stepped closer from the other side of a door. I snapped, not in a heroic way, in an ugly way. I grabbed my machine with both hands and slammed it face down onto the carpet ring. The impact jolted my wrists. Keys popped loose. Plastic cracked. The preview screen blinked, glitched, and died. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Like even they didn't know what happened when you shut the mouth. Then the room erupted. Not screaming, not chaos, but cold anger. Chairs scraped as people stood. Someone hissed my name. No, not my name, because they didn't know it, just to sound like they wanted to call me something. SHFB stepped toward me fast. His calm finally slipped. His face tightened, human and furious. You idiot, he said through his teeth. Do you understand what you've done? Yeah, I barked, voice shaking. I stopped this stupid. The speakerphone cut me off. No, one word. razor flat. The overhead lights blew out with a loud pop. The room dropped into darkness except for the green exit sign and the small red LED on the speakerphone. That became the center of the world. A little eye. The carpet ring rose. Not a subtle swell anymore. It lifted like something underneath, pushed up with both shoulders, stretching the rug tight. The circle became a dome. The bowl in the center trembled. A wet, hungry sound came from inside it, too big for the ceramic. SHFB reached for my arm. His fingers closed on my sleeve and yanked. His grip hurt, nails digging. The kind of grip that says he's used to grabbing people and not being challenged. I jerked back and felt the steno case shift under me. My feet were still off the carpet, tucked up, thighs screaming. I tasted blood and rage. "Fix it," SHFB hissed, dragging me toward the rising center like he was shoving a sacrifice forward. "Fix it now." The bowl tipped, just slightly at first like it was deciding, and something inside it moved toward the lip, thick and glossy, making a sound like wet hair being pulled from a drain. The bowl tipped, just a few degrees, not enough to spill anything you could see, but enough to make the wet thing inside it slide against the ceramic with a thick, deliberate sound, like a tongue finding the edge of a cracked tooth. In the blackout, that sound was enormous. SHFB's fingers stayed hooked in my sleeve, dragging me toward the rising center of the carpet. The exit sign threw sick green light across faces that suddenly looked less like neighbors and more like people waiting in a storm cellar for the door to blow in. Somewhere near my knees, my steno machine, face down on the rug, made a tiny, pathetic click, a dying electronic sound, like it wanted to be part of this again. The speakerphone's red LED pulsed once, not blinking, breathing. "No," the voice repeated, and this time it didn't sound like a person on a line. It sounded like something wearing a human voice the way you wear a coat that doesn't fit. Wrong in the shoulders. SHFB shoved me forward. "Get to the center," he hissed. "I'm not going near that." The carpet dome heaved. The fibers stretched tight and shone under the exit sign like wet hair. You could see the ring clearly now, a perfect circle that had been worn flat by something doing the same motion again and again. Not dragged, circled. Something underneath pushed higher, like it was trying to sit up. A chair leg touched the rug. It was a tiny mistake, just a fraction of an inch as someone stood too fast. You could hear the metal tip press into the carpet. Instantly, the whole room reacted like a single nervous system. The person who'd done it, a woman with glassy eyes and a pastel cardigan, froze mid-step. Her face went slack. She didn't even look down to fix it. She couldn't. The speakerphone made a sound like a wet inhale. The carpet bulge snapped toward her. Not sliding, snapping, like a thing under skin darting. The woman's shoes scuffed. She tried to back away, finally, but her chair leg was still on the rug. Trapped by a rule she'd broken by accident. SHFB let go of my sleeve and lunged for her chair, yanking it back like he could undo the mistake by force. The metal leg scraped hard across tile. Too late. The carpet ring lifted under her feet. She went down like the floor had opened, but it didn't open. It rose up around her ankles, then her calves, wrapping, gripping. The carpet fibers tightened like braided cord. Her mouth opened and a sound came out that wasn't a scream yet, because the shock hadn't reached her brain, just her throat. Then the bowl, still in the center, slurped. Something inside it surged up over the rim in a thick, glossy roll. In the green light, it looked almost black, but when it caught the faint glow, it shone dark red-brown in streaks, like old blood and oil mixed. It reached toward her. I saw it clearly for a second, and my brain rejected the shape so hard it made my vision blur. It wasn't a hand. It wasn't a tentacle. It was like a strip of wet, layered paper, thin sheets stuck together, peeling and re-sticking as it moved, like a stack of minutes soaked and alive. It slapped against her shin. The woman finally screamed, high and raw, and the sound hit the room like a thrown object. Every face turned away. Not because they didn't want to watch, because they knew watching mattered. Like looking was participation. The speakerphone chuckled again. The strip thing climbed. It didn't wrap. It filed itself upward, layer by layer, as if her body were a document it was trying to cover. Her scream choked into a wet, stuttering gasp. Then she said, very clearly, through sobs, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's. Her eyes rolled up like she was searching for the word that would save her. SHFB shouted, don't. But she already had it in her mouth. The automatic human impulse. Make it right. Make it official. Approved, she whispered. The moment the word left her tongue, the carpet dome dropped. Not gently. It slammed down like a lid. The woman's scream cut off so fast it sounded like someone had yanked a plug. The room went silent except for the low, satisfied hum of the vents. Then the lights snapped on again, full brightness. The bowl sat upright and still, perfectly centered. The carpet ring looked flat again. Beige. Normal. Like nothing had happened. Except the woman was gone. No blood. No torn fibers. No stew. No cardigan button. Just an empty space where her chair had been, and a faint wet sheen on the ceramic bowl's rim that caught the overhead light and glistened. My stomach convulsed so hard I tasted bile under the metallic blood in my mouth. Someone in the circle, beard guy, murmured, minutes will reflect. PNW cut him off softly, not that. Her eyes met mine. Calm as a librarian. Fix what you broke, she said, or you'll replace her. You were warned. SHFB snapped, trying to regain control of his voice. He had sweat at his hairline now, shining. Rules exist because something listens. The speakerphone's LED steadied. Solid red now, like an eye held open. I backed away, without standing fully, crab walking on my steno case like an idiot because my feet still didn't want to touch that carpet. My legs shook violently from holding them up so long. My thighs were on fire, but pain felt distant compared to the fact that a person had been swallowed like a dropped coin. You hired stenographers before, I said, voice cracking. How many? How many times has this? Enough, PNW replied, and all of them thought they could outsmart procedure. I didn't. You slammed the mouth into the carpet, SHFB said. You forced it open without words. Do you understand what the word is for? No, I whispered, because I finally realized I didn't want the answer. PNW stood and walked to the speakerphone. She didn't touch it. She crouched close like she was listening to a shell at the beach. We have an issue, she said to it. The phone crackled, almost affectionate. I noticed. SHFB swallowed, then spoke carefully, like choosing every syllable. Recorder has damaged the device. Device typed the forbidden term. We need containment. The speakerphone clicked. Containment requires accurate minutes. My pulse hammered. You said don't fix errors. PNW glanced at me. That was for your safety. The phone hissed static, and a new voice layered over the old one. Fainter, like someone speaking from behind drywall. Read it back. Rule 2. My hands went cold. SHFB leaned toward me with the kind of smile you give a witness you're about to destroy on the stand. Now you have to, he said quietly. It's asking. PNW said almost kindly, if it hears itself, it stabilizes. That's insane, I breathed. It's administration, she said like that made it better. The speakerphone's red light brightened. Read. I looked down at my steno machine, still face down on the carpet ring. If I reached for it, my hands would touch the rug that had eaten a woman whole. Pick it up, SHFP ordered. I shook my head. He stepped forward and put his shoe on the edge of my case, pinning it lightly like he was pinning a mouse. You don't have leverage here, he said. You're in the room. That makes you part of the minutes. Do it. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to bite him. I wanted to do anything that wasn't obey. But the image of the cardigan woman's mouth opening, then nothing, burned behind my eyes like a flashbulb. So I did the only thing I could do. I followed the rules the way a drowning person follows a rope. I slid my steno case forward with my hips until it bumped the very edge of the carpet ring. The fibers brushed the leather. Nothing happened. I swallowed, then extended my hands slowly, wrists rigid, like approaching a wild animal. I grabbed the steno machine by its sides without letting my fingertips touch the rug. The plastic was cold, damp too, like it had been pressed against something sweating. I lifted it. For a second, I thought the carpet would cling to it like static, like it wanted to keep its mouth. But the machine came free, and the ring stayed flat. I sat on my lap. Blood had smeared into the seams. The preview screen was dead. My hand shook so badly the keys rattled. The speakerphone crackled impatiently. "Read." I can't," I said. "You can," SHFB echoed, and the mimicry made my skin crawl. "I don't even have the transcript." I snapped, gesturing to the dead screen. It's broken." P&W tilted her head. "You have a memory card." Of course I did. My steno machine stored everything. Even when the display died, the strokes were there. My stomach sank. They weren't going to let me walk out with it. Not now. Not after a forbidden word had been typed in their room. "Get the card," SHFB said. I hesitated. He reached for my machine like he was going to take it. Instinct took over. I pulled it back, clutching it close like it was my baby, like it was my shield, because in a weird, twisted way, it was the only thing I had that could speak their language. "I'll do it," I said, and my voice came out too loud. "But you're all staying back." SHFB smirked. "You're making demands." "I'm making distance," I said. "Because if this thing," I nodded toward the speakerphone, "decides it wants another mouth, I'm not going to be the closest one." That wiped his smirk off. His eyes flicked to the empty chair spot. The fear was there, tucked under his arrogance like rot under paint. He stepped back half a pace. P&W watched me like she was watching someone disarm a bomb. Not worried I'd die. Worried I'd do it wrong. I pulled the little memory card from the side slot with trembling fingers. It was slick with blood. My tongue throbbed again. I wiped the card on my sleeve like that mattered. "What now?" I asked. P&W pointed to the lectern. "There's a laptop beneath it." I looked. Sure enough, a cheap black laptop sat on a lower shelf, closed like a tool that lived there. Like this room had been built around the ritual, and everything else was decor. I stood slowly, keeping my feet on tile. My legs nearly buckled from the strain of holding them off the carpet for so long. Pins and needles shot down my calves. I limped to the lectern and opened the laptop. It was already on. The screen glowed with a plain text editor and a single blank document titled minutes_current. No icons, no wallpaper, no personal files, just a hungry blank page. My mouth went dry. "You do this often." P&W didn't answer. I inserted the memory card. The laptop made a soft chime, way too cheerful for the situation. A folder popped open automatically. Inside were dozens of files, all named with dates. Some went back years. My throat tightened. Those were records, not just minutes. Evidence of a repeating act. "Open the latest," SHFB said, and his voice shook slightly, like he hated that I could hear it. I double-clicked. The file filled the screen in raw steno translation. Ugly, imperfect words, missing punctuation, wrong homophones. Because that's what real-time transcription looks like before you polish it. My blood smeared on the trackpad as I scrolled. And there it was. Approved. Sitting clean in the middle of a sentence like a bright red button. The moment I saw it, the speakerphone's LED flared. The vents deepened into a low, resonant hum like a throat clearing. "Read," the phone commanded, and the word rattled my bones. I swallowed hard. Rule 2. If asked to read back, refuse. If you can't refuse, cough over the sentence so you don't return it clean. I tried refusal anyway, because denial is the first move when you don't have a better plan. "No," I said, steadying my voice. "I'm not reading anything." The lights dimmed a notch. The carpet ring darkened, like damp spreading. The bowl in the center, still and innocent, made the tiniest tick sound like a fingernail tapping ceramic from the inside. My skin went cold. SHFB whispered, "Don't provoke it." The speakerphone crackled. "Read." P&W spoke softly, like calming an animal. Recorder is nervous, she said to the phone. I know, it replied, and there was amusement in the static. My lungs tightened. I realized with sudden clarity that this thing enjoyed procedure the way a spider enjoys a web. Not because it had to, because it liked watching things struggle inside it. I leaned closer to the laptop screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard. A thought hit me, sharp and ugly. They wanted accurate minutes. They wanted the room to hear itself. They wanted that word spoken clean. But the rule sheet said something else too, something everyone seemed to treat like superstition until it wasn't. Don't fix errors. Let them stay. Bite your tongue. Be messy. So maybe it wasn't just about avoiding the word. Maybe it was about corrupting the record. Because in a courtroom, a transcript is power. It becomes truth. It becomes the official version. And whatever this thing was, it fed on official. It fed on being made real by documentation. My pulse hammered. My tongue hurt. My hands were slick. I looked at the line with approved again. What if I made it not clean? Not by refusing. Not by coughing. By making the minutes wrong. Rule 3. Never write anyone's full name. Initials only. If corrected, ignore the correction. They didn't want full identity in the record. Names made things stick. Words made things stick. So I could maybe make the word not stick. I glanced at the residents. They stood like a jury, waiting to see if I'd convict myself. Fine, I said, and my voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. I'll read. SHFB exhaled, relieved. PNW smiled faintly. The speakerphone went quiet, listening. I took a breath. Then I coughed, hard, and started reading around the word, chopping the sentence like I had earlier. We cough. Move that the prior decision be cough. The lights dimmed. The carpet ring lifted slightly. The phone hissed. No, clean. My throat closed. My cough wasn't enough anymore. Chef B stepped closer. Stop playing games. I wiped blood from my lip with the back of my hand. It left a smear. I looked back at the laptop, at the line. Approved. I put my fingers on the laptop keys. And I did something that felt like stepping off a cliff. I hit backspace. The word disappeared. The speakerphone shrieked, static exploding loud enough to make me flinch. The overhead lights flickered violently. The carpet ring bulged up like something underneath slammed its fists. Everyone in the circle recoiled. PNW's comm cracked for the first time. What are you doing? She snapped. Not fixing errors, I said through my teeth. Letting them stay. That's not an error, SHFB barked. That's a trap. I cut in, and my voice shook with adrenaline. That word is the only thing you've all been dancing around all night. It's the hook. The speakerphone's LED pulsed fast, angry. Restore, it demanded. The bowl thunked hard. The carpet dome started rising again, faster, like the room itself was taking a breath. My hands moved without permission. Years of transcription, editing, polishing, years of making language clean, turned inside out. I started corrupting the line. I retyped it, but wrong on purpose. I wrote, APPR 0 VED, with a 0. Then I misspelled it. Approved. Then, approve 3D. Then I broke it with parentheses. Opet per uv. I made it ugly. I made it uncertain. I made it impossible to speak clean without choosing a version. The speakerphone screamed again. The sound wasn't just noise, it made my teeth ache. The overhead lights dimmed, then dimmed more, like it was trying to drown the room in shadow. PNW lunged for the laptop, but SHFB grabbed her elbow. Don't, he hissed. Don't cross. She ripped free anyway and slapped her hand down on the lectern, steadying herself, eyes locked on my fingers like she wanted to break them. Stop, she whispered, voice suddenly desperate. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said, and my own fear shocked me with how fierce it had become. I'm making your minutes unusable. The speakerphone's voice dropped low. I require affirmation. No, I said. You require something official. Something clean. Something you can keep. The carpet dome rose higher. I could see the fibers stretching again. The bowl trembled, that wet layered strip inside, it's shifting toward the rim. My hands kept typing. I scrolled up through the minutes and started corrupting everything that sounded like it belonged to their ritual. I replaced "we agree" with "unclear." I replaced "affirm" with "mumbled." I inserted typos like landmines. I broke sentences in half. I added cough marks, false starts, overlapping speech. I made it sound like a room full of humans instead of a room full of synchronized mouths. SHFB shouted, "You're killing us." "Then leave," I snapped. "You can't leave," P&W said, and she sounded like she meant it in more than one way. "This room," the speakerphone cut her off with a sharp click. "Minutes are law." That sentence hit me so hard I almost stopped breathing. Minutes are law, not guidelines, not notes. Law. That's what this was. They weren't just recording reality. They were creating it. And every time a stenographer sat in this chair, every time someone typed the ritual clean, they made the thing under the carpet more real, more stable, more able to reach through procedure like fingers through a crack. The cardigan woman had died because she gave it the cleanest thing you can give an authority, the official word. Approved. My tongue throbbed and anger surged again. I typed faster. The screen blurred with text. The lights dimmed until the room was mostly green exit sign and the angry red eye of the speakerphone. The carpet dome rose until it was knee-high, then waist-high. It was like the rug had become a living hill in the center of the room. People backed up, pressing against walls. Chairs toppled. A glass of water someone had set on the lectern edge tipped and spilled. The water ran toward the carpet ring, and for a second, I thought it would touch. Before it could, the carpet fibers sucked it up, not absorbing like cloth, sucking, drinking. The bowl slurped again, eager. The layered strip surged up and out, longer now, thicker, and I realized with horror that it wasn't just paper-like. It had faint lines on it, like ruled notebook paper, like printed margins, like pages. It slapped against the air, seeking. The speakerphone's voice became multiple voices, overlapping. Some sounded like men, some like women, some like kids, some like old people, all saying the same word over and over, trying to force it into existence. Approved, approved, approved. My ears rang. My vision wobbled. P&W screamed. Actually screamed when the strip brushed her ankle. It left a dark, wet streak on her pant leg like ink. She yanked back, panting, and for the first time her eyes looked human, wide, terrified, furious. "This is why we do it properly," she shouted at me. "This is what happens when you break process." "No," I yelled back, and my voice cracked. "This is what happens when you keep feeding it." The speakerphone shrieked again. The laptop screen flickered, and for a heartbeat the text on it rearranged itself. Not like a glitch, like a hand had grabbed the words and dragged them into new order. The word "approved" appeared again, clean, at the top of the document. My stomach dropped. It could rewrite. It could correct. It could fix errors. It could polish the minutes itself. I stared at the screen, horrified. Then I noticed something else. Along the edge of the text, where the cursor blinked, there was a faint smear like the pixels were wet. Like the screen itself was sweating dark. Ink. The thing wasn't just reading the minutes. It was coming through them. Like language was a door. My hands went numb. I needed something it couldn't correct. Something that wasn't digital polishable. Something messy, physical, human. Blood. That note on the rule sheet wasn't superstition. It was a failsafe. If you accidentally type any forbidden word, bite your tongue until it bleeds and smear it over the keys. Not because blood is magic. Because blood ruins clean. It stains. It corrupts. It makes things unfit for official record. A clean transcript is power. A messy one is just noise. I didn't have time to think it through. I just acted. I bit my tongue again. Pain flashed. Warm blood flooded my mouth. I spat it onto my hands and smeared it across the laptop keyboard like a maniac, rubbing it into the keys, the trackpad, the edges smearing it onto the screen bezel. P&W recoiled, disgusted. Stop. You'll ruin. That's the point. I shouted, voice thick with blood. Then I grabbed the memory card folder and dragged it into the trash. My fingers shook on the touchpad. I almost missed. The speakerphone's voices rose in volume, frantic now, like a crowd losing control. Restore, restore, restore. I opened the trash. I hit delete. Belmano. The laptop hesitated. A small dialog box appeared. Are you sure you want to permanently delete these items? My heart slammed. Of course there was a confirmation. Of course. And the button options were yes and no. So clean. So official. I could almost hear the room's laughter at the absurdity. My blood-slick finger hovered over yes. Then, without warning, the lights came back full brightness. The carpet dome froze mid-rise. The bowl stopped trembling. The speakerphone fell silent. For a moment, everything held still like a paused video. And in that sudden brightness, I saw it. The carpet ring wasn't just worn. It was stitched. Tiny thread work, almost invisible unless the light hit it right, ran around the circle. Letters stitched into the carpet backing, repeating over and over, like someone had embroidered a legal clause into fabric. Not words you'd notice at a glance, just a pattern. But now, with my eyes locked on it, my brain started to recognize the shapes. It was the same line repeated. We agree. We agree. We agree. A binding phrase. A seal. And inside the ring, where the carpet looked darker, the fibers were matted down in another pattern, like something had been pressed there over and over. A mouth. The room wasn't just a room. It was a document. A contract you stood inside. And the minutes weren't notes. They were signatures. The speakerphone clicked softly. In a single, calm voice now it said, proceed, as if giving me permission, as if I was part of it. My chest went tight with panic, so sharp it almost became clarity. The question on the laptop screen, are you sure, was the most human, bureaucratic thing in the world. A safety latch, a polite pause before you do something irreversible. The thing loved those pauses, those confirmations, those clean yes/no choices, because they were affirmations. I needed to answer without affirming. I needed to refuse the premise entirely. I turned to the residents. Where's the breaker? I shouted. They blinked at me like I'd asked where the bathroom was. SHFB sneered weakly. What? The breaker panel, I yelled again louder. Where is it? P&W's eyes narrowed. Don't. That was the first time she'd said don't with fear in it. I swung around, scanning the walls. Community rooms always have a closet, a utility door. Something. There, near the back, behind a stack of folded tables, a gray metal panel set into the wall. I bolted. My feet hit tile then. The carpet ring was between me and it. My brain screamed, not TO touch. Rule 4. Keep your feet off the carpet. But the cardigan woman had been eaten because her chair leg touched the rug. Not because she crossed it. Not because she stepped. Maybe the ring wasn't a trigger as long as you didn't rest on it. Or maybe I was about to die. Either way, staying meant dying slower. I ran. I jumped the ring. My shoes cleared the carpet by inches. For a second, I felt nothing but air and terror. I landed on tile on the far side, knees jarring. Pain shot my legs. Nothing grabbed me. The room didn't swallow me. The carpet dome trembled like something inside. It was surprised I'd moved without permission. I lunged for the breaker panel and yanked it open. Inside, rows of switches. No labels except a few faded marker scrawls. Lights, outlets, HVAC. I flipped them all. Everything went dead. The laptop died mid-question. The screen went black. The overhead lights went out again, but this time not dimming on. The vents fell silent. The exit sign flickered, then died too, plunging the room into total darkness. For one heartbeat, there was nothing. Then the speakerphone laughed. Not static, not papery. A real laugh, low and close, like it was right behind my ear. You think darkness stops language? It murmured. Something cold brushed my knuckles. I flinched back, slamming my shoulder into the breaker panel. In the dark, I heard the carpet ring move. Not bulge, crawl. Fibers dragging. The sound of thick cloth being pulled across tile. The bowl scraped. Wet paper shifted. The thing didn't need light. Light was just part of the theater. My hands shook blindly along the breaker switches. I tried flipping some back on. Maybe I needed the lights. Maybe the ring depended on the stitching being seen, like words needing to be read. My mind was spiraling. Then I heard something else. A faint tapping from a doorway. Not knocking from outside. From inside the room, like fingertips tapping the metal handle. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. My breath caught. The same rhythm my fingers had been typing earlier when the machine typed without me. A code. A cadence. I swallowed blood. The tapping continued, patient, almost polite. The speakerphone whispered, "Open." I didn't move. The tapping stopped. A voice, very quiet, came from the doorway. Not through the phone, through the air. My voice. "Open," it said, perfectly mimicking my tone from earlier when I'd said, "I'll do it." My skin went ice. Then another voice joined it. Cardigan woman's voice, thin and wet. "Open," she whispered, like her throat was full of carpet fibers. I backed away from the door so hard I tripped over a chair. I hit the floor, pain flaring in my hip. In the dark, something shifted near the center of the room. A heavy movement, like a body turning over. The carpet ring exhaled. The air smelled like damp paper and old pennies. My phone was in my pocket. My real phone. The one that had nothing to do with their speakerphone. My fingers fumbled it out. Screen light flared, tiny and pathetic, but enough to show shapes. Chairs toppled, the lectern, the bowl glistening, and the carpet ring slowly lifting again, drawn toward the little rectangle of light like a moth to a flame. I turned the brightness down instantly, but it was too late. The carpet dome twitched toward me. I scrambled backward on my hands. My flashlight app was still open. I didn't dare turn it full on. I swung the phone light toward the ring anyway, because I needed to see. The carpet fibers were moving in a way carpet fibers shouldn't. They were combing themselves, aligning like hair being brushed into a part. And in that alignment, letters appeared again, stitched, woven, spelled out in the direction the fibers lay. "We agree. We agree. We." The strip from the bowl rose and waved in the dark like a banner, and I realized the paper layers weren't paper at all. They were skins, thin membranes, each layer faintly translucent, and within each one you could see ghostly impressions of text, like words pressed into flesh. Minutes, recorded decisions, little pieces of official reality. The thing under the carpet had been built layer by layer, meeting by meeting, word by word, and it was hungry for a new layer. I heard the residents in the dark now, breathing, whispering, shuffling. They weren't calm anymore. The ritual had broken. Without light, without their controlled cadence, they sounded like a room full of scared people. SHFB barked. "Turn the power back on." PNW hissed. "Don't let it free roam. It needs the seal. It needs." The speakerphone cut her off. "It needs a decision." My phone light flickered as my hand shook. A decision. Yes/no. Approved/denied. Agree/disagree. It lived in binary. It lived in official choices. I understood then why they needed a stenographer. Not just to record, to force a clean choice into existence. To nail down uncertainty into a single line of text. And when I'd started corrupting the minutes, when I'd made the language messy, I'd threatened its ability to anchor itself. So it was escalating, taking bodies instead of words. I pushed myself to my feet, knees wobbling. My steno machine was still near the lectern. The laptop was dead. The minutes files were still on the card, maybe. Maybe not. But I knew one thing. I had to get out of that room. The door was across the carpet ring. The ring was in the middle like a moat. I could jump it again, maybe, but the dome was higher now, closer to chest height, and the strip thing waved like it could reach. I scanned the room with my phone light, quick flashes. Windows. There were 2 big windows on the sidewall. Thick glass, but not barred. Outside was night and the parking lot and freedom. I stumbled toward them, keeping wide around the carpet ring. The bowl scraped again, and the strip snapped toward me, slapping the air with a wet crack. I ducked instinctively and felt cold damp brush my hair. My scalp prickled like it had been licked. I ran. Chairs clattered as I shoved past. Someone grabbed my arm. SHFB, I think, but his grip slipped on my blood. I hit the window with my shoulder. The glass didn't break. Of course it didn't. Safety glass. I slammed again, harder, pain exploding through my shoulder. Nothing. P&W screamed behind me. Stop. Don't break the boundary. Boundary. Another word they'd used earlier like it meant property lines. Now I knew it didn't. The boundary wasn't just walls. It was the contract of the room, the minutes, the seal. If I broke the window, I might be breaking the containment. And yet, if I didn't, I was dead. The strip whipped again. This time it slapped my back. Cold, wet pressure, like being smacked with a soaked newspaper. I gasped. My shirt stuck to my skin. I felt horribly the faint raised lines on the strip where it had touched me, like embossed text. Not readable. Not yet. But it left an impression the way a stamp leaves ink. I knew with dread certainty that if it touched me enough times, I'd become readable. I'd become record. I grabbed a folding chair and swung at the window. The chair hit with a dull thud. The glass spiderwebbed, finally, cracks racing out like lightning. The room made a sound, not the people, not the speakerphone, the room itself. A low groan, like a ship hull under strain. The carpet dome surged. The strip snapped toward the broken glass as if drawn to it. And for a second, I thought it would spill out into the night like ink into water. SFB screamed. No. P&W actually ran toward the window with both hands out like she could push the cracks closed. I swung the chair again. Glass chunks fell, glittering. Cold air rushed in. The strip hesitated, writhing at the edge of the ring like it didn't like the draft. The speakerphone's voice went sharp. Close. I ignored it. I shoved my arm through the cracked glass, slicing my forearm. Pain flared hot. Blood ran immediately. Good. Messy. I pushed harder, knocking out more shards. Then I climbed. Glass bit my palms. My knees scraped. My shoulder screamed. Someone grabbed my ankle. SHFP again, desperate now, nails digging into my skin. Don't, he yelled. If you break it, if I break it, you can't keep feeding it. I screamed back. I kicked him in the face. My heel connected with something soft. He grunted and fell back. I hauled myself through the window. The cold night air hit me like a slap. It smelled like wet asphalt and car exhaust and the faint, sweet rot of leaves. Behind me, inside the room, the darkness churned. For a second, my phone light caught the carpet ring as it swelled toward the broken window like a tide pulled by the moon. The strip rose, reaching. Then it stopped at the edge of the ring like it had hit an invisible wall. It trembled. It pressed. It quivered like a slug against salt. It couldn't cross. Not without permission. Not without a clean decision recorded. The speakerphone shrieked so loud it made me flinch even outside. Approved, it screamed desperate, furious. And inside, I heard voices, residents, panicked, chanting now without rhythm. Approved, approved, approved. They were trying to force it. They were trying to give it the clean word so it could follow me. P&W screamed at them, stop, stop, Yule. The chant drowned her out. I dropped from the window into the shrubs below, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through my ankles. I rolled, gasping, then scrambled up and ran through the parking lot like my life depended on it. Because it did. Behind me, the clubhouse windows flashed with light for a split second, like the breaker had been flipped back or the room had found its own power. Then the lights went out again. Then came a sound I will never forget. A wet, tearing rip like a giant sheet being pulled apart. The clubhouse shook, not subtly. The whole building shuddered like something inside it had slammed against the walls. The front doors burst open, not outward like an explosion. They were pushed slowly, steadily, as if a heavy pressure rolled them aside. The air around the doorway looked wrong. Not smoky, not misty, just thick like heat haze in winter. The speakerphone's red LED was visible from outside now, glowing through the doorway like a coal. And the voice, no longer trapped to the room acoustics, carried across the parking lot in a low, calm tone. Minutes will reflect. I ran harder. I dove into my car, hands shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice. When I finally jammed them in the ignition, my forearm left a smear of blood across the steering wheel. The engine roared to life like a miracle. In the rearview mirror, I saw figures spilling out of the clubhouse. Residents stumbling, yelling, some running away, some running toward the building as if trying to hold it closed again. And behind them, in the doorway, the carpet ring was no longer flat. It had slid, like a living thing. It had dragged itself toward the threshold, fibers combing, letters shimmering. We agree. We agree. We. Then it stopped again, trembling at the boundary like it was choking on it. The chant from inside rose again, frantic. Approved. Approved. My stomach dropped. If they succeeded, it would cross. If it crossed, it would follow me. I slammed the car into reverse and peeled out, tires squealing. The sound felt obscene, too loud for such a quiet suburban neighborhood. Porch lights flicked on. Curtains twitched. I didn't care. I drove until my hands cramped around the wheel, until my lungs burned, until the neighborhood turned into highway and the highway turned into industrial backroads. I didn't stop until I hit a 24-hour gas station under bright fluorescent lights with cameras on every corner. I stumbled into the bathroom and washed my face in cold water. My reflection looked wrong. Not physically wrong, but like my eyes had learned something they couldn't unlearn. My tongue was swollen. There were bite marks along the sides. Blood crusted at the corner of my mouth. I pulled up my shirt and checked my back where the strip had slapped me. There was a mark, a faint rectangular bruise, damp-looking, like a watermark on paper. And across it, raised in tiny lines, were letters. Not a full word. Not yet. Just the beginning. I'll pay. My stomach lurched. I scrubbed at it in the sink until my skin turned raw. The letters didn't disappear. They weren't ink. They were pressure, embossing. I drove home with every light on in the car, radio blasting, windows cracked for cold air, like noise and brightness could keep language from settling. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my steno machine in front of me, cracked and smeared with dry blood. I opened it up with a screwdriver, hands trembling, and pulled the memory card out. I stared at it for a long time. Then I snapped it in half. It took more force than I expected. The plastic bent before it broke, resisting like it didn't want to die. When it finally cracked, I felt a strange wave of relief, followed by immediate terror, because relief felt like an affirmation, like a decision. I threw both halves into a glass of water and left them there like drowning them would help. My phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It buzzed again and again. When it finally stopped, my laptop on the counter, closed, asleep, made a soft notification sound. I hadn't touched it. The screen lit up by itself. A blank document opened. The cursor blinked. Then letters appeared, typed one by one, slow and deliberate, like someone with wet fingers pressing keys. of a day. My throat closed. I slammed the laptop shut hard enough to hurt my palm. The notification sound came again. From inside the closed laptop, a soft click, 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 like a speakerphone button being pressed. Then from the darkness of my living room, a voice spoke. Not from the laptop speaker, not from my phone, just from the air, low and calm. Read it back. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I realized something awful. It didn't need the clubhouse anymore. It had my mark. It had my hands. It had my work. I'm writing this with voice to text, and I'm leaving every mistake, every stutter, every wrong word. I'm not correcting anything. I'm not making it clean, because clean is a signature. Clean is agreement. And if you're listening to this, if you ever find yourself in a meeting where everyone talks like they rehearsed, where there's a bowl on the floor and a speakerphone no one admits is plugged in, don't say the word. Don't type the word. And if you see it on a screen, don't read it back. Don't give it your voice. Don't give it your confirmation. If you have to bleed to make it messy, bleed. Because the only thing worse than being swallowed in that room is becoming the thing that writes the minutes for everyone else.